Have you ever had one of those days, everything's going great, and then one tiny negative thing happens, and boom, the whole day is just torpedoed. Suddenly, that's all you can think about. We've all been there, for sure. So today, we're going to break down why our brains get so hung up on the bad stuff, and more importantly, how we can learn to get unstuck. So, let me tell you this story. Picture this. You're 8 months pregnant, totally exhausted, you've just wrangled 3 kids, and you run into a store for just a minute. You come back out and you find this on your car. Not just a scribble on a napkin, oh no. A pre-printed business card someone actually carries around to tell people they suck at parking. And for the rest of the day, that one little card just replays over and over in your head. And that's the big question, right? Why is it that one nasty little card or that one critical comment in a meeting feels like it weighs 1,000 pounds, while all the good things that happened that day just float away? It's a feeling we all know, and it turns out there's a really fascinating reason why it happens. Okay, so here is the absolute key to all of this. That person wasn't actually upset by a piece of paper. She was upset by the story her mind instantly started telling her about it. People are just cruel, or the world is such a mean place. It really reminds me of what the psychiatrist Viktor Frankl said. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And that little space, well, that's where all our power is. Well, it turns out our brains are actually hardwired to get stuck in that negative space. And honestly, it's for a pretty good reason. Think about it from an evolutionary standpoint. Our ancestors who obsessed over every little rustle in the bushes were the ones who didn't get eaten by a tiger. That built-in negativity bias kept us alive. But today, it mostly just keeps us stuck. So let's dive into the science to see what's really going on up there. So the social psychologist, Dr. Allison Ledgerwood, got really curious about this exact thing. Do our minds actually get stuck in the negative? She designed some really clever experiments to figure out if bad really is stronger than good when it comes to how we think. Okay, so check this out. In one of her studies, she described a surgical procedure to 2 different groups. She told the first group the procedure had a 70% success rate. That's the gain frame. And no surprise, they felt pretty good about it. But she told the second group it had a 30% failure rate, the loss frame. Same exact outcome, right? But their reaction was totally negative. But here's where it gets really wild. She went back to the first group, the gain frame folks, and said, hey, you could also think of this as a 30% failure rate. And boom, instantly they flipped and felt negative. But when she went to the loss frame group and told them they could think of it as a 70% success rate, crickets. Nothing changed. They were stuck. It was like a one-way street into negativity. And this isn't just a feeling, you guys. You can actually measure it. In another study, she timed how long it took people to switch their thinking. And look at this chart. Going from the positive view to the negative took about 7 seconds. But trying to get from the negative back to the positive, that took almost 11 seconds. Our brains literally have to work harder and longer to see the upside. So we've got this negativity bias baked into our brains. It's super easy to go from good to bad, but a real struggle to go from bad to good. So now let's talk about how this bias actually shows up in our day-to-day lives as specific, sneaky thought patterns. Therapists have a great name for these. They call them ANTs, for automatic negative thoughts. And it's the perfect acronym because they just kind of swarm your brain. They're like this constant background noise. You're so used to them, you don't even notice they're there. They're those little whispers that say, I'm such an idiot, or this is never going to work. And the tricky part is they feel like absolute facts. Now, one of the most powerful types of ANTs is something called catastrophizing. And to really get it, let's use this classic story. You've got a guy. He gets a flat tire on some dark country road. It's a bummer, but not the end of the world. But then he realizes his jack is missing. Okay, now it's a real problem. He sees a little light from a farmhouse in the distance and starts walking towards it. But as he's walking, his ants just take over. His mind starts spinning this story. He's going to wake up the farmer. The farmer will be angry. Then his brain jumps to, farmers have guns. And before he knows it, his thoughts are in a total spiral, turning this person who might help him into a violent criminal who's going to rob him. So he finally gets to the house, and by this point, he is just furious and terrified. The farmer opens the door with a smile and asks, hey, can I help you? And our guy, completely lost in his own made-up disaster, just yells, I don't want your dang jack anyway, and storms off. It's the perfect example of how our internal thoughts can create a real-world negative outcome. he completely cut himself off from the help he needed. So that story is pretty extreme, I know, but we all do this in smaller ways, right? The good news is we are not powerless. We don't have to let these ants run the show. So let's open up the toolkit and look at how we can start fighting back. Okay, so there are two main evidence-based strategies we can use. The first one comes from cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, and it's all about challenging the thought head-on. Think of it like mental judo. You engage with the thought to redirect its energy. The second strategy comes from acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT, and this one is about just unhooking from the thought, creating distance without having to fight it at all. All right, let's break down that first strategy, the CBT one. It's a pretty clear 4-step process. First, you just have to notice it. Catch that ant as it pops into your head. Step 2, pause. Just take a breath, remind yourself a thought is not a fact. Third, you explore it. Gently ask yourself, is this thought 100% true? Is there another way to see this? And finally, you choose. You actively choose a more balanced, more realistic thought to focus on instead. Now, this second approach, the one from ACT, it is so simple, it feels like it shouldn't work, but wow, is it powerful. Instead of getting into a big wrestling match with your thought, you just rephrase it. So instead of thinking, I'm a failure, you say to yourself, I'm having the thought that I'm a failure. See that little shift in language? That technique is called cognitive diffusion. All it does is create a tiny little bit of space. It's a reminder that you are not your thoughts. You are the one observing your thoughts. You're just noticing the words that your brain, that little word machine, is churning out, without having to believe every single one of them. So these are amazing tools for when you're caught in a negative spiral. But what if we could be more proactive? What if we could play offense instead of just defense? Well, we can. We can actually train our brains to counteract that natural negativity bias. Remember Allison Ledgerwood's research? It showed us that seeing the good stuff, it takes conscious effort. It's not our brain's default setting. But here's the really cool part. That means seeing the upside is a skill. And just like learning to play the guitar or speaking a new language, it's a skill you can get better at with practice. So how do you practice? Well, research points to a few really simple habits. First, a gratitude practice. Every day, just jot down a few things you're genuinely grateful for. Second, share good news. Make it a point to actually talk about something good that happened, not just complain about the bad stuff. And finally, choose forgiveness. The next time someone is rude to you, what if you just consciously chose to be generous in your mind instead of instantly getting angry? So here's what it all boils down to. Yeah, our brains might be wired to notice the negative and hold on to it for dear life, but that is not the end of the story. We can retrain them. We can build that skill of seeing the good. The power to shift your focus isn't some far-off thing. It's right here, right now, and it can start today with this one simple question. Thanks for tuning in.